That's smooth. Yeah.
Sup, everybody?
Welcome.
Joanna, I love your lights. I love your necklace. It's a very festive feel in your screen tonight. How are you feeling? Are you here today?
I'm here. I'm here. If I could have put lights in my necklace, I would have. But then I couldn't go very far because, you know, they plug in. So
right. You need some kind of battery operated something or other. I may look for something for you.
Interesting.
Yeah, I mean, you know, sky's the limit. So welcome to another episode, our final episode of the year of Straight Up Positive, where we shine a light on our PAC certified community. And we have a very special guest tonight, Iris Beer, who we cannot wait to talk to. We actually met with Iris way back in September to talk about having her on. And then we had scheduled to have her on the week of conference, and we just didn't want to get lost in all that was going on with conference and the amazing programs that were going on Tuesday night, which we're actually going to talk about that because Iris has taken away some things from conference that she's implementing. So more to be on that, but we actually put a pause and said, Iris, can you come in December? And she did. So we're super excited to have her on. Before we introduce Iris Beer, Shelley, I know that so many organizations slow down during the holidays, and January sometimes can be slow, but not in the PAC world.
No, not a PAC. I feel like I'm almost busier now than I was right before the conference. So,
so what do we have going on? Because I know there are things coming up.
Yeah, let me share our PowerPoint screen here to show folks. So hopefully you guys are seeing it, right?
We gotcha.
Okay, sorry, I have two screens and I'm getting very confused. So give me a second on that to get rid of that so I'm not confused. Hold on. Oh, pooey. All right, there we go. All right. So again, as always, you know, our life in social media is growing by leaps and bounds. So we want to continue to have you guys follow us on Facebook and absolutely on YouTube. And I'm going to tell you a little bit more about YouTube at the end, some things we're doing differently. And since we're talking about the conference tonight, I thought I'd go ahead and let people know that they can still get recordings from the conference for half price, $62. We've had quite a few people purchase in the last couple of weeks. In fact, I saw 2 orders come in today. So people are finding it helpful and valuable. So if you want to check that out again. Whoop, this is over. I just realized, shoot. I didn't take that one out of the PowerPoint. The holiday sale was over, but you know, you can still get good stuff if you come to the store and check things out. And our TikTok life is, it's crazy. We're up to, we're up to like 4 million likes already or some unbelievable number. And we're up to almost 200,000 followers. They just keep coming. So TIPA goes live 2 days a week for half an hour on TikTok. And then every Friday, the Soltis Place folks are doing those dance challenges. And so there's a lot of really cool things to watch with that. So check out TikTok if you're wanting to do that. What are we doing next time on Straight Up Positive? I don't know, but I thought maybe we'll celebrate going into 2022 or celebrating 2021, or I don't know. We're just talking about it, right, Rebecca?
Yes, we have some ideas that we are playing around with, and Joanna and I, we're having some fun. It's such a pleasure having Joanna on the show, and we've interviewed some amazing folks who are going to be on in January and in February, but man, no one really wants to take that January 4th spot. So I don't know. But we have some things up our sleeve. So more to come, but we plan to be with you here on January 4th, and it may just be a discussion
Okay.
about all that's coming up. So
Well,
yeah.
and that's actually, I think that's not a bad idea, Rebecca, because that kind of leads into these next two slides. Starting in 2022, in January, our Friday open doors is going to be changing a little bit to only once a month. It'll be the first Friday of the month. And then the third Friday of the month, always at the same time that open doors was happening, is when we'll have our certified community webinars. So we've usually had one webinar a month. And TIPA is doing about half of them in 2022. And then Amanda and Alejandro will also be doing them. So the first one is coming up on the 21st. And she's going to talk about the tools that we can use to communicate with medical providers. So I thought folks would be interested in that. We're also making some changes on how you're going to be accessing that. So maybe we can talk about that on the floor as we get things going. And then, of course, our first certification of the year in 2022, and it's open right now for registration, is going to be a consultant. We opened up all of the year, I think, for our virtual certifications. And the in-person stuff will be coming soon with more protocols and more changes and stuff like that. Because as Omicron came in and all the other kind of stuff, we're having to make some other kinds of modifications, and we're actually looking for locations. Had a meeting about that today. So that's why I said it doesn't stop here.
Yes. And I know so many people, it's been such a mixed bag of so many people can't wait until we're live again. And then so many people have been able to be a part of things that wouldn't have been able to be a part of certifications and conference. And yeah, so I think what I'm hearing is there will always be a mix. There will always be options.
Yep.
And we will see where we go in 2022. But here we are now. And I just am so thankful for the faces on the screen. And I'm so excited to bring Iris Beer in because she is a mover and a shaker. And as we said last time, we are rounding out our year with Canadians, which I love. We're ending with this international feel. So Iris, will you introduce yourself and tell our viewers a little bit about who you are, where you are, and a little bit of background, and then we'll dive into the how you got invested in this whole pack of ours. So welcome to SUP, Iris.
Thank you. It's so nice to be here and be with you guys. I'm Iris Beer, and I'm a registered social worker at Jewish Family Services in Ottawa, Ontario, Canada. And I've been working with seniors for the past 20 odd years. Currently, I'm the clinical manager of senior services and the manager of services for Holocaust survivors. And Jewish Family Services, in the seniors department, we have two distinct units. One is the Thelma Steinman unit, which is primarily working with Jewish seniors and their families. And the other is the Diverse Seniors Unit, which works with diverse communities like the Chinese community, Arabic speaking, Hindu, and a whole array of diverse communities. So yeah, that's basically my background. And also I'm a care partner to my mom who lives with vascular dementia.
So thank you for that brief history of Iris. And then how did you get connected with PAC?
Yeah, so a couple of years ago, I was really noticing an increase among our clients that were living with brain changes. Something was going on with cognitive challenges, and more, people were looking to us, and more I was feeling, I don't know, I'm lacking in knowledge, I'm lacking in skills, I'm getting back geriatric assessments that are telling me, the individual has mild to moderate dementia or cognitive decline, but it's not really telling you anything. And then what do I do? And I was sharing some of my frustration with a colleague who mentioned Teepa Snow. And I went on that website right away and I was like, oh my gosh, this is what I'm looking for. So what I did was I wrote up a grant to the Jewish Federation of Ottawa, really outlining, care partner burnout and we wanted to be able to provide more to serve our community and raise awareness, but it started with us. And so I got the grant for the training and also to allow me, it gave me 1 day a week to work in consulting. And, from the moment I did the pre-course work where, learning about the brain and different aspects and just approach and the whole concept of a positive physical approach, never even thought of confrontational versus supportive. And I couldn't wait. And I was so fortunate that I got to go to a consultation certified course in San Diego. And I think I was among the last who got to do it in person, which was such a great experience. And
So it sounds like, Iris, I think one of the things that I'm hearing from your story is that even with your vast experience in working in geriatrics, you were finding that specifically, and I don't think I'm putting words in your mouth. I think what I heard was you were finding that with dementia, you just didn't feel like you had quite the tools that you needed to support those who are living with brain change and their families. And so that's what, when you went to teepasnow.com and then found about the certifications, it was that extra piece that you needed to provide that extra level of support for your clients.
yeah, because, we had been working with, a strong commitment to person-centered relationships and involvement. And so, with Holocaust survivors, that person-centered trauma-informed care of looking at resilience and adaptability. And so much of what I was picking up from PAC really resonated in working with families and clients and looking at what could be going on, not just the surface of what you're being presented with.
So those two things, or those multiple theories, it sounded meta or matched well together, it sounds like.
Yeah, it really did. And just in working like with Holocaust survivors. So, I was used to advocating with medical personnel or home care agencies when they would say that there's a reaction to someone taking a shower. So explaining that whole background of the Holocaust and what a shower could mean, and maybe try something else and adapt your approach. So that made so much sense to me in working with people living with dementia. It's understanding what those unmet needs are, trying to, tap into that and helping care partners to also be able to step back and look at what's going on.
Yeah. One of the stories I remember you told me when we met before, speaking of resiliency, was you mentioned a story about a couple who there was a fall. Can you tell that story about them? I was spending a night on the floor, I think.
Yeah, I was talking to a client who was telling me the night before his wife had fallen out of bed. And so he checked to make sure, no broken bones, she wasn't in pain, but he wasn't strong enough to help her back into bed. And he knew that the personal support worker that we were funding to provide some assistance would be there the next morning. So he took the pillows off the bed, he took the blanket off the bed, and he lay with her all night. And, he was, crooning to her and, soothing, and they fell asleep. And then when the PSW knocked on the door the next day, he went to answer the door and she helped him to get her up. And I was like, why didn't you call an ambulance? And just matter of factly, he said, well, we survived a lot worse. This wasn't so terrible. I knew somebody would be coming, and it all worked out.
And she wasn't in distress. Is that what I'm hearing, Iris? She
had the comfort of her husband. He made it comfortable. And
I can imagine calling an ambulance would have made it not comfortable.
Not comfortable.
I think that he did it
also the trigger for many survivors of medical personnel and a hospital and a siren going, like just the noise of it would have been really traumatizing. And he knew that it would all be okay.
That's amazing. That's excellent.
Yeah.
So that's such a great point, Joanne, that I didn't think about. I just was really focused on the resiliency of, gosh, I mean, for me, thinking of laying there on the floor all night and his attitude of, well, we've been through worse. But really, Joanna, what you're bringing to light is, and I appreciate you saying that, because I hadn't considered that, actually what I'm thinking would have been better actually could have been much worse. So thank you for taking it to that deeper level, Joanna. That's so true.
Sure.
Wow. So, yeah. So Iris, another thing that you brought up was that so I said you were in a mover and a shaker when we got started. And so
never think of myself that way, but thank you.
Well, here's what I heard. You said, I went to the Tape of Snow website, I did some research, and then I wrote a grant to get to go to this course. And not to steal your thunder, but I know that where we're going to get to is now that I'll give X, because I want you to be able to give the number of staff members actually certified in your organization. You're a mover and a shaker. So tell us about that, writing the grant, you getting your certification, you going to the course, and how many staff members are now certified?
There's around 12 that they may not have completed the certification, but will and receive their training over the course of 2021. And that was, the realization that I'm one person and I can see so many people, but if more of our staff are trained, we share a common language, a common way of meeting with clients, and what a difference that can make. So wrote up, actually, we have someone who writes grants. So for this one, I gave all the information, but I have to say, we had also at that time, there was a change at Jewish Family Services with a new executive director and associate executive director, and just approaching them with, you know what, it's not just X that needs to be served. All seniors that we meet with should have the opportunity for this type of approach, and what a difference that can make in other communities. And they agreed. So JFS wrote up a federal grant this time and was able to receive the funds for 12 staff to get their training. And now we're thinking about, we have an adult day program. So those staff to maybe take either coaching, but definitely the champion courses. And again, it just, when you're talking among ourselves and different struggles come up, being able to go back through, whether it's a training cycle or something else, to look at a problem and problem solve together. And it's so, I think, empowering for staff not to be told, but to experience and be able to come up with their ideas and their ways of taking this information and bringing it to clients and communities. So it's been really nice.
And yes, and so kind of piggybacking on that idea of not telling someone, but helping people find their own solutions. I know you had talked about your first certification was consultant, correct? And I'm curious if you can go back to, you said it was maybe the last certification course that PAC offered before things really shut down in 2020 with the pandemic. And so that was probably like February, March of 2020 that you went through that consultant course. So I'm going to ask you to dig way back in your long-term memory. Some things that really stood out to you from that certification course. What were your takeaways from the consultant certification course? What were your takeaways from that?
Well, I love the 6 pieces of the puzzle. You know, really like what's intrinsic, what can possibly, and what, you know, is more difficult, and how you can start with individuals and really look at those 6 pieces. And the whole concept of detective, you know, somebody else is bringing in stuff and you're bringing in, and together how you start looking at what's going on, who the person is, who they've always been. They're different now, but they're still that person that they always have, and what they liked, what they disliked. And it's just such a different way of really going about it and working with individuals. And that's a huge takeaway.
The framework of the 6 pieces of the puzzle, it sounds like, was a big.
And also just the whole consulting cycle, you know, it's not necessarily, you know, generally, you know, you ask a whole bunch of questions and they give you, and then you offer something, right? Here it's working together, offering options, wondering. I even someone I'm working with, and it's so funny because now he uses those terms. I'm wondering, I'm curious about, and it makes me feel so good. I love it, you know. But yeah, I kind of got stuck there. But
no, I love that. So you've modeled it so much that you're seeing other people do that. That's fantastic. Let's just applaud you for that, Iris. That's amazing.
And it's also, you know, reflecting back and validating and waiting. You know, you don't always have to fill that silence. You allow individuals to think, to take it in, to question, and work together to maybe trying this and see what happens, and then what worked well and what didn't go so well. How can we tweak that? And even with like the responsive cycle, where I think there's such a recognition for the grief that care partners are experiencing, and you don't have to get to a solution. You're with them where they are to work through that, and what can be helpful in moving forward, maybe, but more in what they are needing, what are their unmet needs, and how maybe that can be met one piece at a time, rather than, ooh, I think this, and this, and you should do this, and call me in a week type thing.
Iris, can I ask you a question? This may be going off in another direction. what do you think the grief is about? You talked about the care partners or the staff. I think that's what you said. I'm curious, what do you think that's about? What the grief is?
Well, I remember with one client stating, you know, she'd been married 60 years.
Mhm.
And so they grew up together. And this is the person that she counted on, but she can't count on him in the same way.
Mhm.
And so it's what can you let go and what's still there that you can have moments of joy together. But I think it's recognizing, and for so many care partners, you know, they go, 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 go. And then they're left. I'm just thinking of someone in particular with like rage. And
Mhm.
how can you expect anybody to go, 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 and not take a moment for you, what's going on inside?
Sure.
So I'm not sure if I answered, but those are some of
Oh.
my thoughts.
No, I appreciate that.
Joanna, how about you? What do you think?
You know, I was thinking something.
I do. I know that about you.
I think we were going to talk about this too, about um, treating the individual as an individual. And I mean, I'm going to try and go in order. So where I was going with that grief question, Iris, was I wonder if care partners, if they knew and believed, truly believed that the person that they're caring for that has the dementia knew that their care partner was there, even if they couldn't communicate that to them. If the care partner, spouse, child, whoever it is, knew, okay, I know that until they've left this earth, they've left this body, they know I am here. I wonder if that would alleviate some of the grief. I know it doesn't change it or erase it because obviously that relationship has changed, but I hear so much from a lot of people I talk to and work with that that's so hard because they feel like the person living with the dementia is, you know, they feel like they've given up on them because they, you know, that's what they are presenting, is it doesn't matter if they're there or not, if that's making sense. And I think there's just all kinds of guilt there and grief, and you're, you know, mourning the loss of what who you once knew. So I'm just curious if you thought that that would at least make things a little bit better if they knew that person knows when you are in the room until their last breath, they know. And to me, that would change it for me. So that's kind of where I was at.
And I also think in like going with what you're saying, it's how do you help someone recognize that? And, you know, like with this particular woman, for her, food was super important, and looking, you know, he's not eating as well. But what does he enjoy? So he really liked smoked salmon. And so she would now bring him the smoked salmon, which he couldn't really digest or swallow, but she would put it for him and he'd smack his lips, and it gave her so much joy and he got joy. So thank you, because
Perfect.
yes, I think searching for what that connections can always be in different stages is super important.
And I think, I mean, Joanna's bringing up such an important aspect that when as professionals, and many folks in our certified community mainly serve care partners, right? So let me say that again. Many times dementia care services are geared towards care partners. And so, Iris, most of your consulting services and training services are geared towards care partners, right? So that's mainly what you're thinking about. And I think even in your practice, to hear from Joanna, who's living with brain change, to say, well, what are they grieving? And it's just an honest, very unloaded question. What are they grieving? Because Joanna is also thinking about what she's grieving, I'm guessing, right? And so for you as a professional to even ask that same question that Joanna presented to you, to the care partners that you work with, have you talked or have you sensed grief from your loved one? It would be interesting to hear what people said. Are they sensitive, are care partners sensitive to, or keeping their eyes and ears attuned to grief that may be there for the person living with the diagnosis? Or is it something that hasn't even been on their radar?
Yeah, I think that's really interesting because for me, as I'm working with different individuals, care partners, and people living with dementia, it seems to be on the forefront, and I could be totally off, with earlier, stages, and not as in tune with as things advance. I don't know. Would that make sense? Or
So thinking more that there might be more grief earlier than,
or not that there's more grief, but that there's more demonstrated grief for a care partner to tune into or pick up on. I'm not sure, but I'm thinking of one individual who was told by her doctor she can't drive anymore. And that is a huge loss. It doesn't really matter where you're at in life. That's a huge statement, right? And so, working through that and validating that loss. And I'm sure there's many other examples that I'm kind of freezing on right now, but yeah, wondering what you think.
And I think that, I think it's an important topic, and maybe one that maybe we just found our topic for January 4th.
Yeah, no, I think
because it's not, I think that it's a topic that a lot of us deal with at this time of year, especially with unmet or mismatched expectations, and kind of rolling into closing in a year and rolling into a new one. So I don't know, maybe we're tapping into something with grief. But I also want to talk about successes, because one of the things that makes PAC unique and different is that we don't simply focus on what's changing, but also what remains. And I know that Joanna referenced this, and we're going to get to it here in a minute. A great example of how Joanna has been a huge blessing to some of your staff members, Iris, but also, Iris, I want you to share some of the successes that you've had with clients. In particular, I remember there's one that you used some rhythm. And I'm wondering if you can share that story share that story with our viewers about how you helped tap into that. What is it Teepa always does? Oh gosh. Language on the left.
Rhythm on the
Rhythm
right.
on the right.
You got to stand up and do the dance though.
Yeah, lose on the
On the left, you retain on the right.
retain on the right. Yeah, I can't do the hip shaking like Tifa and Alejandro do, but so that rhythm piece, and you tapped into it, helping someone remember how to or retain that function of picking up their phone. Can you tell our viewers about that?
Yeah, so Ontario's been through many different lockdowns, and unfortunately, so much of our work has been over the phone, and not everyone has internet or computers. And so, with one specific woman living with dementia, I would speak to her on the phone and she would talk about, different things, and we'd talk. And I would ask her to walk me through. And so, because I couldn't visualize, what her home looked like. And she was expressing that she gets really frustrated because, with the phone, when she'd hang it up, let's say she'd be in the living room and she'd put it down, but then the phone would ring and she couldn't find her phone. So we talked a lot about, she's artistic and likes the flow of things. So we talked about a mantra. And so she came up with pick up from the base, return to the base. And then she started doing Post-its and in different colors that would, really make it visual for her. And she would put it on her sofa, on her, mirror in the bathroom, wherever, as just like a little cue to where her phone would be. And her phone bases were actually in her bedroom and one in the kitchen. But what was interesting also was after we got out of lockdown, although now we're back into restrictions, I did a home visit, and her home was totally not how I pictured in terms of the layout. But there were the Post-its of the phone and hanging it up and pick up from the base, return from the base in her kitchen and bedroom.
That's awesome. And as a avid Post-it note fan, I love that story. And I love that you were able to see that this process that you implemented that was really successful, and that you were able to see it firsthand and go lay eyes on the home and see that it was, and that really going back to that rhythm piece, and that helped with the success of that. Tapping back to that piece that we were just there with grief, and kind of going back to that, seeing what's there and not just what's not there. You really helped another client whose family member was focusing on what was missing and not really seeing what was there, and now they have a daily dancing session with Elvis Presley. So tell our viewers about that, because that's awesome. As a Memphis girl, yay, Elvis.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so he was very much into what's gone, that life will never be the same, that all the losses, all the things his wife couldn't do, and then asking about things that they used to enjoy doing together and what she would enjoy. And one of the things that came up was they used to go dancing. They loved to dance. And what kind of music. It was 50s music. And especially they both liked Elvis Presley. So, working with him to how can that become part of your life again? Because why did that necessarily have to be something to throw away? And so now, they have every evening they put on the YouTube of Elvis Presley and they dance. And it's nice. And it's a moment that, it's something that they share together. And she dances well and he dances well. And it doesn't really matter, does it? Because they're enjoying each other.
But it sounds like that wasn't really something that he was thinking of on his own, right? It really took you pulling at, well, what was it that you guys used to enjoy doing together, right?
Yeah.
And reminding him that, well, that's something that you still can do together.
I was just going to add, Iris, I think what's a really another cool outcome from that is they're both getting exercise every day that
Right.
they wouldn't have even thought of doing, right? I just think that is just so cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And when we talked about this before, it tapped into something that Joanna shared with us. Joanna, how you shared that how you and Forrest you've had to shift some things that you do together and maybe make some modifications, but can you tell our viewers some of the things that you all do that maybe you've had to make modifications, but you still are able to enjoy together?
There are so many, but yeah, there are things that I know that I want to try to do, but I probably shouldn't. But the music and the dancing part of our relationship, we both enjoy that. That's one of the first things that brought us together. And it's easy because we just turn on the radio or Pandora here, whatever station, and we dance. And I almost feel like I have more energy. I can take a deeper breath if I'm feeling kind of low. And he puts on, I like a big band and swing music. So I've been listening to my Brian Setzer holiday station and just, I can be dragging, as you know, I don't sleep well. And we're going on, 4 hours of sleep in the last 3 days. And I can just all of a sudden, I feel like a different person. And, and then, he's wiggling around and making me laugh. And not everything is supposed to be the same, even if you don't have dementia. Life is, we've got these places in our lives, some people want to be 25 forever. I've never wanted to be 25, not even when I was 25. So it's like, enjoy that place. I know I'm coming from a place of, I think I've got the easy part, being the person with Alzheimer's and not the care partner, but I wanted to share something really quick with Iris and you guys. This was about 5 years ago when I was first diagnosed. A family member, a very close family member, was coming to visit Forrest and I, and she, we opened the door and she was talking like this, and I can't even try and repeat it because it's just so odd. And I turned to my husband and I said, "What's wrong with her?" And he goes, "I don't know. She's your relative. Why don't you ask her?" I was like, are you okay? Is there something or something? I was thinking maybe she had a TIA or, a stroke of some type, because she was, we can laugh about this now. It's not funny if she had a stroke, but she didn't.
Right.
She was acting like a totally unfamiliar person in my life who had known me my whole life. And so, anyway, we got through that interaction, and later on I said, I don't even know what just went down, but if she had just treated me the way she always had,
Right.
I wouldn't have gotten so distanced. I think I asked her to leave. I think my husband said, you're just behaving. You're making my wife uncomfortable. And it was just this, that terrible feeling when someone negative is in your space. So I'm wondering if if other folks, it's probably really hard to go, okay, this is Iris first. And, I'm taking you as an example, if you had dementia, and she's Iris first, so I'm going to treat her like Iris because, that's your identity. And then she's living with dementia. And but it's usually, for most folks, it's different. All of a sudden they've got, oh, now it's this person. The first thing is they're living with dementia. And the second piece is, oh yeah, and they used to be a human too. And maybe they were teaching, or they were a chef, or, they liked ponies. I mean, I don't know. I'm just kind of pulling stuff out. And now they're these strangers. They've been made these strangers by their family or their caregivers or staff, and it could be so much easier. I know I'm rambling, but I since told this person, just be normal, and if I need something different, my husband and I will, give you clues on that, but you don't need to talk to me like I'm a monster, because then I will become a monster, because I hate that. And it was just such a strange experience, because I thought something is wrong with her. She's ill, or she broke her head or something.
Right.
It was so strange.
So let me piggyback on that, Joanna, so treating Joanna as Joanna first. And I know some people who are watching this episode may have heard a bit about your story. Some may have not. I'm not sure if we talked to Iris previously about your profession, but can you tell us, some of us again, some of us for the first time, tell us what your work, what you did for work, once a teacher, always a teacher, once a nurse, always a nurse, certain things like that you're just always going to be, right? Can you tell us what makes you tick?
For
what
me,
you did for work? Yeah.
Well, what made me tick is figuring out what was going on in here for people. And so my background is PhD in psychology. I was a college professor, and I was an independent contractor for law enforcement doing profiling and cognitive assessment, psychological testing. So I really never stopped being curious. I don't think I would ever stop being curious. So you can imagine when someone I knew very well all of a sudden is acting like a crazy person. And later on I heard that they said, well, it's because you have Alzheimer's. I just thought this is how I was supposed to talk to you. And it was striking. It was striking, because I thought, I bet she's not the only one that does this. I bet you other people are feeling very uncomfortable in how to interact. And then, I thought, God, I've got to tell you, that's when I'm not going to recognize you. You can look exactly the same for the next 40 years, but if you're going to treat me like a person with the dementia first and Joanna second, we don't know each other anymore. I don't know you anymore, because you are not behaving and interacting and talking to me the same way. That's and again, I'm saying that from, I think I have the easy piece, but to me, wouldn't that make life so much easier if you could just treat everybody like anybody else that you meet? And then you find out, hey, maybe we need to take things a little bit slow over here and modify this and modify that. to me, it wouldn't, I mean, that would be so much easier for everyone involved.
Yeah.
But,
Curious, has she picked up on what you've said? Is she now,
oh, this family member?
yeah,
Oh, no, no, that unfortunately crashed and burned. I used that example because it was such a bad one, but no, that was, again, something that seems to happen, and even with family, is friends and people that you used to work with or knew before
Mhm.
getting sick. Sometimes they don't hang around, and I understand it. It's uncomfortable to be around someone who makes you uncomfortable, which I would never do intentionally, but I know that I do because I'm not how I used to be. So, the circle of friends and people who are close, it shrinks.
Yeah.
That's okay. It just, I wish people knew it didn't have to be that way. It didn't have to be that way for me, but I wish people didn't have that kind of loss because it doesn't have to happen.
Right. Yeah, I was in hearing you say all that, Joanna. That was one of the things that I was thinking is, man, if we just said to people, forget about the other. They're still Joanna. They're still Shelley. It's just, we're just
Right.
different. We can all be different at different times of the day, at different times of the year. So who the heck cares, right?
Right.
So
And you could
wow.
look exactly the same.
Yeah.
It's not about, and that's, another thing is, pictures and all this, don't you know little Jimmy? Well, does not everyone change? I mean, I know I changed my hair from pink to, but it's like no one looks the same. And the thing that, that is the thing that connects us, to me, is our spirit and our soul. That does not change. That's what I recognize in my husband and my friends and, the people in PAC. I don't need to see that you are, look the same. I know, I just know that from how we interact. That's how I know who you are. That's how I recognize you. I don't recognize you with my eyeballs. I was going to say in my earballs, but that doesn't make any sense.
You know what I'm thinking about though, Joanna, as you're saying this, is when something changes, okay? So you're talking about your situation. So, and you've had folks who unfortunately haven't been able to make the change with you, right?
Right. It's too uncomfortable for them. I'm doing as much as I can on my part, but yeah, I get it.
And then there's other people who have been able to, and maybe you've added new people who are able to change with you, right?
Well, but what's weird is those people who were in my life before that you say have been able to make the change, they really didn't have to change much. They are just receptive. They are aware. They're sensitive, and it's business as usual. And
Gotcha.
it's like, how hard was that? And they tell me, you're you. We know this is going on, but you're you, and
Yeah.
we roll with it.
So I'm kind of thinking about, and maybe this is a stretch, but it made me think about too, and so from making a comparison to your individual experience, and we know that every one person's individual experience is unique, but these are stories that we hear, trends that are common, that these stories are not unusual. Also, on a bigger perspective, when there's organizational or cultural change, oftentimes there's folks who aren't willing to make shifts. And so when I hear Iris talk about, okay, now they've gone from, in 2020, Iris brought this PAC consultant piece to JFS Ottawa, and now they have 12 people who have PAC certification. I'm guessing there have been some shifts in approach and bringing this whole positive approach to care thing. And so I'm wondering, Iris, if you've seen some successes or shifts in how your team is changing culture in how you're supporting your clients, and maybe some successes. And part of that I know was actually an overlap with Joanna. We actually had a little bit of an overlap of a success that Joanna got to be a part of. She didn't even know until we were on last week.
Yeah, so should I start with that or?
Well, tell us about just you mentioned a success about visual field, right? Like your staff is really grasping this visual field piece, right?
Yeah, I think a lot of it, just going back to what you said, Joanna, in terms of culture, I think changing, because we're all recognizing that certain people do stigmatize, and it's trying to get away from that so that there's understanding and not, fear or I'm not sure what to do type thing. And I think with staff, a huge shift in the lens is just learning that people generally take in information visually first. So rather than, talk, 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 it's how can you make it more visual? And I think that was a huge takeaway for staff. Also, for all of us, I get nervous when I'm like, oh my God, what am I supposed to do? But that whole thing of pausing, taking a deep breath, thinking, trying to ask more questions, give some options so that you know that you could be on the right track or maybe not. But it's just a different perception of how to go about working. And it's not just with people living with dementia. I think it also is so helpful in general with people we're working with, because we want to empower rather than be won over somebody else, because who are we to even do that, right? And so I think that has been a really big shift. And we're not experts. Chipa's an expert, but for the rest of us, we're moving along, plodding along, looking for the best ways that we can support and be with people in the moments and hopefully make changes. And I think with also the whole idea about taking certifications and training is so that we can reach larger numbers of people so that there is less, I don't know what to do, and this can be going on, and understanding, I mean, for me, huge, about the different parts of the brain. So, I mean, you were saying language on the left, rhythm on the right. I will never forget that. But the whole thing of, somebody yelling out to someone else, große Tuches, which in Yiddish means big bum, but not as nice, is not necessarily an insult, as more of an observation. And they're not saying it in distress, they're reaching out to somebody. So if you can realize what's retained, then that's such a beautiful tool to work with people. So I think that's what's shifted, a lot for staff, for myself.
Yeah, and it's so neat to see. I think for us as individuals, when we see that shift in ourselves, but for us to see that shift in staff members and as an organization to start seeing those shifts is just, I don't know, I'm not a parent, like a proud parent kind of moment or something. I don't know. It's just,
Yeah, no, it feels great. And I also, because I know we're running out of time, but I do want to mention that I know, Joanna, you helped one of our staff individuals, Sarah, because she was doing her certification, and she was doing the consulting cycle, and she felt such non-judgmental judgment from you in being there and guiding her and talking with her and supporting her. And it was just so incredibly helpful to her.
so
And
just to clarify for our viewers, so it sounded like Joanna sat in on what for folks who do our certifications have to do, or I say have to get the
They have the privilege.
get the privilege of doing mentoring sessions as part of their certifications. Our certifications are rigorous because it's a process, and to be PAC certified, we take that very seriously. And part of that is mentoring after the certification courses. And so your staff member, Sarah, was doing her final mentoring call, from my understanding, and Joanna was sitting in with our lead mentor, Alejandro, and Joanna got to be a part of that. And so that's just for a little bit of background for our viewers who are not familiar with this whole process. And then when we were meeting last week, you put the pieces together that you were talking with Joanna, and that Sarah had actually come back to you and said how important it was, or how special it was, that Joanna was a part of that mentoring call. So Iris, will you tell our viewers a little bit more about that, Sarah, what Sarah's feedback was about Joanna?
oh, she was so nervous. And all she could think of is what I'm supposed to say next. And you helped her stay relaxed and focused. And what she kept telling me was you were so not judgmental of her, which she
I
really
couldn't be if I
appreciated.
wanted to be, so there's no
Well,
place
of
for
course you
that.
could. No, you're not doing it right. Like, seriously, do you honestly think that's the right thing to say to somebody? I think that could be helpful. So there are many ways that you could have been. And you
All I
were.
know is how I felt all I know is how I felt, and I felt good. I didn't know what all the words were and all the right and wrong things. I knew how I felt, and how I felt was good. So whatever she was doing to have that good feeling with us, it was working. So, I mean, I thank you for telling me that, though. I really appreciate that.
And I think what was so cool, being just a part of that discussion last week, was neat for me, even though it was just kind of witnessing you guys connect over that shared experience through Sarah, was that Joanna, hearing that what you're doing with PAC, you're still teaching, you're still using the skills that make Joanna, and that is making such a difference. And it's making a difference in Sarah's life. It's making a difference in Iris's experience, her work, her staff, her team. You're making a difference in my life.
It made a difference to me. I mean, it was huge. It's huge. I mean, everything is. So we get to connect.
Yep.
And we're spiritual beings. So when we get to connect, and it's good, and we know how we feel, I mean, not to get too far into the fluff, but that's all I care about, is how I feel. And I feel good when I'm with you guys and with the PAC team and people who get it. And now all I'm thinking about, Iris, is Sir Mix-a-Lot's I Like Big Butts song, because you said that big butts thing. So I'm thinking that might be a theme That song makes me so happy. You should see my husband dance to that. It's hilarious.
Wow. And so Joanna mentioned earlier how until someone takes their last breath, that presence is felt. And so want to transition because one last thing, Joanna, we will definitely talk offline about Sir Mix-a-Lot because I've got lots of trauma from the very intro as someone named Rebecca who used to be called Becky. So we'll talk later. But Iris mentioned the conference, and I know we're gone over, but you guys can log off if you're bored with us. But the family's journey through dementia, and you talked about until someone takes their last breath. And so, Iris, you have purchased that, you bought the streaming and the license to use that, and your team plans to use that next year. Tell us how you plan to use that, because that really does show you.
One of the things that can be challenging as you're working through, understanding different things is gems. I think sometimes it really is difficult to understand gem states and well, what's exactly emerald, what's exactly amber. And not only for people living with dementia, but all of us, because, we're all going through different states at different times and in different interactions. So I watched during the conference, you showed the family's journey through dementia. And I think we only got up to Amber,
Yeah,
Ruby.
Ruby. We got it to Ruby.
Finished with Pearl. But I was like, this is amazing. What a powerful visual and way to show without awareness or PAC skills, what's going on, the different stages, and seeing a family member, a person living with dementia, a paid care provider, a medical professional, like all the different interactions, and then seeing it also the same gem states using PAC skills. And I think that's going to be really helpful for us as a staff. And we'll do lunch and learn. So haven't really figured it out, but at least 5 and probably more, because I'm sure there's going to be a lot of discussion. And then being able to use it as part of a training for community, different groups. And, so not only, normal versus not normal, or obviously hand under hat, all that, but also to actually be able to show and share so that there's greater clarity of what people do go through and how PAC skills can make a difference. And I'm very excited about it.
That's great. And I think that's what this is all about. Iris, you just set this up perfectly, just because that's what Straight Up Positive is all about as well. That's why we have this show. That's why we do this, is to show people like yourself and how you're using PAC skills and awareness and your certification to make a difference in the world, and using tools that PAC puts out, like this family's journey through dementia, to show with PAC, without PAC, what the difference is. And we want to applaud you as our last guest of the year and the difference that you've made with bringing PAC to your organization. Thank you. Thank you for the work you're doing.
I want to thank PAC, because one thing we didn't talk about, but all the support that you get from PAC mentors, the webinars, Open Door. It's just amazing, which I don't think people realize when they sign up, just how involved you can be or may choose not to be, but it's there for you. And even the dementia journal, the different tips, it's so appreciated. So thank you, all of you.
Thank you, Iris. Well, happy holidays, everyone. I hope 2022 is amazing, and we will see you here on January 4th for what will undoubtedly be a fun discussion, potentially about Sir Mix-a-Lot. Maybe, maybe not.